Well, Britney Spears released an album and a song in 2000 called Oops, I Did It Again. I'm vaguely familiar with that song. I'm not going to sing it, but I am a little familiar with it. But I resonate totally with the title and have lived out the title scores of times. How could I have made a decision to walk one way and then go back and do something that seemed so foolish and say to myself, oops, I did it again? How many of us have made decisions that we really want to change in an area of our life only to repeat the pattern and say, I did it again? Last week, we looked at how even the Apostle Paul struggled with that. Do you remember that? We looked at those verses on the board and saw Paul saying, the things I want to do, I don't do, and the things I don't want to do, I do. Let's look at those again. Look on the board, Romans 7:15. Paul says this, I don't really understand myself. I want to do what's right, but I don't do it. Instead, I do what I hate. I want to do what is right, but I can't. I want to do what is good, but I don't. I don't want to do what is wrong, but I do it anyway. I have discovered this principle of life that when I want to do what is right, I inevitably do what is wrong. Now, last week we introduced this whole thing that we've been talking about under the idea that adult behavioral change, that's all of us, changing adult behavior is hard. Churches may pretend like it is easy, but at its root, it is very, very difficult. And we talked about some problems that contribute to us continuing the same pattern. One of the things we said that keeps us stuck is bad beliefs that we hold. You remember I told you about one of the beliefs that I have had most of my life, which is if I just study the subject long enough and hard enough, then I know I'm going to get it. I know I'm going to finally get it. Just one more book, one more author, somebody's going to say it in a way that's going to trigger something in me that's going to make it right. And I have discovered that is not the case. It's far from that. Or this, I'm strong enough, I have willpower enough, I will make this work. Watch me, watch how strong I can be. I'm just going to be able to be fierce in this thing, and I'm not going to do the thing I don't want to do, but I have discovered I hold out for a while, but not very long. Or this one, and I saw this even this week where you say, I'm on the right path, I'm not screwing up, I can tell this is me, I'm doing all I can do, but then you give yourself an excuse because it's a special day. Anybody know what I'm talking about? We get off the diet because it's just been a stressful day, or we get angry and kick the dog when we get home, but that's okay because it's just been a stressful day. I would normally do this, and we discover stressful days happen all the time, and we just give ourselves excuse all the time. Or this one, and this is the most subtle, and we see it the most in church, which is God is going to change me. And so you just hold out for the idea that one day I'm just going to have a metamorphosis. Something's going to happen that's just I'm going to be suddenly different. And those habits that I've been doing, I'm not going to do them anymore because pow, some spiritual something's going to happen. And we see it occasionally, but by and large, most of the adult behavioral change happens when you and I really think about it, make some decisions that are solid decisions, and then have the techniques that are necessary to make that become a lasting part of our life. That was basically last week. Then the other thing about last week is we quickly introduced the idea that our environment plays a huge role in our lives, and it has to be understood if change, real, genuine change, is ever going to happen. Our environment is critical. We define environment as the physical, social, and cultural forces that shape our behavior. I want us all to be hopeful and optimistic about what our environment can bring and offer to our lives, but I also want us to be wise in understanding that the environment can help us, or just as easily the environment can work against us. In other words, your environment, that place where you live, that place where you operate, is not necessarily always on your side. Sometimes the environment's going to work for you, and that's a beautiful thing. When you see that happen, there's a synergy there, and it's like, wow, this is great. But sometimes we have to be wise and say, this environment is working against me, not for me. Everything we do, everything we are, and everything we experience is a combination of energy exchange and resistance. We have an energy force within us that has the power to affect the world around us, and the world around us has an energy force that can affect us, and it often does. In my life, I experience a battle between external and internal forces. I sense that. Now, there are times when there's a symbiotic harmony, when it just feels like so right. I'm just in the rhythm. This is so perfect. I'm making great advances. But I have to know that sometimes, and other times, there's this conflict that is actually bringing me down. Here's what I've learned over the last week studying for this talk. It's entirely possible to move through life almost totally oblivious to how our chosen environment shapes who we are. We sometimes adopt a voluntary sort of blindness that ignores the influence of situational influences. We just kind of ignore situational influences and how it affects us. Dr. Richard Nisbett, a professor of social psychology at the University of Michigan, calls our tendency to ignore the powerful influence of environment, he calls that context blindness. We don't see that the situations around us control us much more than we realize. His research finds we tend to diminish the importance and power of outside forces. That's our environment. And instead, we exaggerate the influence and importance of internal forces like preferences, personal traits, abilities, plans, and motivation. Not only do we do it for ourselves, which is a problem because we are not playing with all the information that we need and it affects us, we also do it with other people. In other words, when I see someone, I am more likely to judge them based on their character than maybe thinking about what their environment has contributed to where they are. Does that make sense? I'll see someone, I had a conversation with someone that I dearly love, and we were talking about a third party that had gone through some really traumatic experiences. I immediately went to environment. I went through the fact that he was raised with a fierce alcoholic father. He became a horrific alcoholic himself. I was seeing those kind of things. The other person I was talking to didn't see any of those kind of things. They just saw he made bad choices. That's a combination of both, but I'm saying by and large, we ignore the environment and only look at the individual decisions. The social psychologist Lee Ross has labeled this the fundamental attribution error. The fundamental attribution error. We don't give any attribution to the fact that the environment plays a significant role. Jesus told us not to judge other people, and he did tell us that. And I believe it's because he understood that our behavior is frequently a reaction to environmental factors, not necessarily the result of internal moral weakness. Does that make sense? It's easy to judge people, and we don't realize the pressures that come from the environment they live in. And the people who are the worst to do this and judge people that way are people who live in basically a pretty wonderful environment, and they don't think about what the other people might be coming from. One of my favorite quotes is by Ian Maclaren, the Scottish author and theologian, who said, "Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. So be kind always. Be kind always." If you have your phone out, why don't you take a picture of that and post that? That would be a good one, wouldn't it? Post that. That would be a really good quote. Where you are from also affects how you understand the importance of environment. Let me explain. In socio-political conversation, we, Americans, are considered a Western country. You've heard that, right? Those of us from the West. That's because we trace ourselves back to Great Britain, and then we trace ourselves back to Rome, and then we trace ourselves back to Greece. That's kind of a Western way of thinking of things. The Eastern world is different. That are people that are traced themselves back to China or Japan. Interestingly, people with an Eastern worldview see context and environment far better than those of us from a Western worldview. Brianna, put that picture up on the screen. Look at this picture on the screen. Look at this. If I were to ask you to describe that picture, what would you say? What would you say? What would you say, Rachel? Fish. What would you say, Casey? You'd see the whale or what? Whale? Is there a whale? Wet. You see whale. Okay. Anyway, Two social psychologists use this in their studies, Takahiko Masuda and also the Robert Nisbett I quoted earlier. They both showed this simple picture to groups of Americans and to people from Japan. Americans are most likely to start off by saying, I see three big fish swimming off to the left. They have pink fins and white bellies and vertical stripes on their backs. People from Japan or from an Eastern mindset are much more likely to say, I see what looks like a stream. The water is green. There are rocks and shells on the bottom. And then there were three big fish swimming off to the left. Isn't that interesting that where we are from will cause us to see that picture differently? We are individualistic by and large from the West. We see the fish. We don't even think about the environment. People from the East say, we see first the environment, and then we see the fish. Altogether, the Japanese reported seeing 60% more background objects than did Americans, which is what you would expect given that East Asians pay more attention to context than Westerners do. Again, the point to all of this, and don't get lost, the point to all of this is to pay attention to our environments. If you get that, you are going to be light years ahead. If you just realize every place you are in this world, you are in a different environment. There's the work environment, there's the home environment, there's the kitchen environment, there's the business meeting environment, there's the after work dinner and drinks with friends environments, all of these different environments, and they all contribute to our lives. Make sure you get this. Environments can hurt us or they can help us. Bill Gates is one of the richest men in the world, and one of the reasons he's so wealthy is because he is obviously a very, very smart man. No one would deny that. Even my geeky friends who are fiercely loyal to Apple don't have a problem acknowledging Bill Gates has a brilliant mind. At the age of 19, Bill Gates left Harvard and he founded Microsoft. One of the reasons he was able to do that is because he is exceptionally smart, but I would argue Bill Gates would not be one of the world's wealthiest men had he not grown up in an extraordinarily unusual environment. When Bill Gates was an 8th grader growing up in Seattle, his parents moved him from public school to a private school that had something almost no other school in the world had at that time. That school he was moved to had a computer terminal connected to a mainframe computer. Bill Gates was placed in an environment that was unlike anything available to almost anyone else in the entire world. His environment provided him with nearly unlimited time learning to program using a powerful computer long before most other people in the world had access to anything like that. Now, Bill Gates would have been successful in life without that one-of-a-kind environment, but it's highly unlikely he would have achieved the highest level of success if he hadn't had such a unique environmental opportunity. When Bill Gates' unique internal giftedness intersected with a unique environmental opportunity, the whole world changed. Environment with his unique giftedness, and the whole world changes. Environment really does affect us. Study after study has found that even if we don't want to be, we are highly influenced by the preferences and beliefs of the people who surround us. Get this, people who live in small rural towns are much more likely to have conservative political beliefs than those of us who live in the cities who might have more progressive beliefs. Have you found that to be true? People inside 285, by and large, are more progressive or liberal than people who live outside of 285. If you're progressively minded and you live in a rural environment, you're more likely to be a bit more conservative than a progressive person who lives in the city. And if you're a conservative who happens to live inside the perimeter, you will be a little bit more progressive. Even though you're a conservative, you'll be a little more progressive than you were. Why? Because the people that we live around, the people that we're influenced by, it really makes a difference. The environment changes. If you live in the suburbs and you're not around different people groups, you don't know. You don't know. Some of the great neighbors in the world could be Muslims. Some of the great neighbors in the world could be of different ethnicities. You find out that LGBTQ are just some of the most wonderful people on the planet. But if you never are around them and all you know is what you have seen, propaganda that you've seen, then you go through life and you say, that's scary to me. I don't want to have anything to do with that. I'm going to keep my beliefs. Once you move into the city and you're around people of different persuasions, you say, you know what? We're all the same. We're all the same. It makes a difference. A great word to remember, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. You may think that you got this thing all figured out by yourself. This is all you. No, you are the average of the 5 people you spend your time with. You think politically mostly the way those 5 people do. That's basically the way you understand the world. And for some, you might think about changing the 5 people that you're around most of the time because it's not taking you where you want it to take you. Do you agree? It's not helping you. The environment we find ourselves in can help us or it can hurt us. Most of us go through life unaware of how our environment shapes our behavior. Who experiences road rage from time to time? I love that some of you sweet little old ladies raised your hand. That's very sweet. Not old, I didn't mean old, that just fell out. I didn't mean old. I meant sweet ladies. I just can't believe that came out. It's not because you're sociopathic monsters. It's because the temporary condition of being behind the wheel in a car surrounded by rude, impatient drivers triggers a change in our otherwise placid demeanor. We've unwittingly placed ourselves in an environment of impatience, competitiveness, and hostility, and in that environment, it alters us. True story. I'm a new dad. I'm 19 years old. I'm in a Burger King drive-thru, and my newborn is in the seat beside me, which we could do back in the day, and he is crying, and I can't make him stop. And I'm trying to find something to make him stop, and evidently the car in front of me must have pulled up, and I didn't move immediately, so the car behind me decided to lay on the horn repeatedly. And I'm not proud of this. I'm not saying this out of pride, but I bolted from the car, grabbed the man's collar, and I told him his blowing of the horn was not helpful, and if he blew the horn again, I was going to stick his horn in a place I think is impossible actually to stick his horn. But I was so angry at him, and he looked so afraid, and I got back in the car, and I started shaking. Now, I was a pastor of the Second Baptist Church of Rosenberg, Texas, when I did this. And I started thinking, God, if that guy shows up at church, this is going to really be embarrassing to me. This is going to be horrible. But it was that environment. It was a crying baby. It was the blowing of the horn. It was the heat of the day. It was not knowing what I was doing in that environment. In an instant, changed me. It is a big deal. Even when we're unaware of the environment, we can still become victims of its ruthless power. Now, here's my purpose today. You got a good setup? You understand what I'm talking about? Environment. That's the setup. My purpose today is to talk about how we can handle the different environments we find ourselves in. I want you to experience change. I want to experience change. And not some change that I impose on you. I have no interest in change. I have no interest in changing anybody in this room. But if you're like me, there's some things that you'd like to change about yourself. There are some things that you say, this one area has tripped me up again and again and again. This one thing has hurt me. And so if that's what you want to change, I want you to have the information that'll be helpful. And a large part of it deals with how we handle our environment. So I want to give you some keys to handling different environments, just 3 really, but if you get these 3, it'll give you some good, solid foundation to begin to work with. So the first thing I want to say is this: avoidance is the first thing to understand about environment. Avoidance. Sometimes the best thing we can do is to avoid an environment that is not geared to helping you, but possibly even capable of hurting you. Now, there are 2 types of environments we're better off avoiding. Most of us are pretty good at avoiding environments that are overtly physically horrible for us. Places that we know we're going to get beaten down. Most of us stay away from that. But our problem is when something feels attractive, feels kind of cool, feels like something that we want to be a part of, but we know the end result always leads to the same disaster. Those are some areas that we need to wise up and say, I need to avoid. It's a fairly easy way to avoid drinking too much if you say, I'm going to stay away from those environments where I find myself drinking too much. If it means that I don't go to the club after work, or I don't go to the bar on Friday night, it means sometimes we have to say, I'm going to not do those things that I have struggled with. I struggle with eating. Guess where I don't need to go? Buffets. Buffets are not my friend. I mean, that's not a good place. I mean, I I've seen my belly button go from an innie to an outie at a buffet. I mean, it's like, that's not a good thing. Thank you, Scott Davis, for that. Anyway. Addiction recovery programs say one of the keys to genuine change is this. Look on the screen. We must learn to avoid playmates, playgrounds, and playthings that we associate with a behavior we are wanting to change. Now think about that. Not all negative environments can be avoided, but the better I get at avoiding environments that aren't best for me, especially environments that I've learned will trigger undesirable behavior, the more peaceful and full of joy my life will become. I know some people, family gatherings are for them bad. When they go to a family gathering, they know what's going to happen. Something's going to be triggered, tears are going to flow, anger is going to be shown, things are going to be thrown, people are going to leave mad. And I would just tell you, if that's the way it is, either learn to control your time there and get in and out quickly, or get in and out before everybody gets there, or don't go, because some environments just need to be avoided. I have a friend, he's a great guy. He likes to drink and hang out with others who likes to drink. Now, you know we don't teach against drinking here. We know that people who can have a glass of wine with their meal or a beer with watching a game, we don't even care about that stuff. But when it causes you to get arrested again and again and again and again and again, at some point you have to say, do I want this to be my story, or do I want to change? And for some, it means avoiding those people that I put myself around, and avoid some of the things that we participate in that end up causing me to be in trouble. People who contribute to the problem have to go, and the drinking has to stop in that situation if you want different outcomes, or your life is simply Britney Spears, oops, I did it again and again and again and again. That's avoidance. That's avoidance, right? So I hope you'll get that, avoidance. The second thing I want you to get is this, anticipation. Really important way to understand environment is anticipation. It's an important tool. Most of what happens to me in any given day is without any obvious consequence. I mean, most things just kind of happen. But I will give you a tiny example of something that I had to change. I don't put sweetener in my coffee. I drink coffee the way God intended coffee to be drank. Very strong and black. That's just the way it is. I was so proud when I figured my son does the same thing. And both of my sons do that. It's like, I did teach them well. That's good. That's good stuff. Jane, on the other hand, puts this packet of artificial sweetener in her coffee. And there have been many times when I've accidentally picked up her coffee, when we're walking around in the morning, I've picked up her coffee and I've taken a sip, and it has made me sick for the whole day. It is horrible. I want to spit it out so quickly. That's a negative experience I could have any morning of the week. Now, on a scale of minor to major, that is minor. But what it has done, it has caused me to begin to make some anticipative moves. Like I study the coffee cup that I have in the morning. I see what if she's got a coffee cup that says one thing, I don't get the one that says the same thing her coffee cup says. I make sure mine's a different color. I make sure mine's different everything. And I study it because I don't want to make that just ruins the day. So that's just a little way that you can anticipate, and it can be helpful. Now, it gets bigger than that. We can amp it up a little with negative experiences that could be a lot worse. I hate getting stuck in traffic. I would imagine all of us do. I especially hate getting stuck in traffic when I have a wedding I am leading or a funeral when I'm leading, because there have been times when I have waited to the last possible minute according to maps to be able to figure out, okay, it's going to take me 52 minutes, and so let's leave. And so we leave 52 minutes before the service is going to be, and then a road shuts down or something happens, and then I'm getting angry and tense, and Jane can just feel the heat in the car. Does anybody else do that? All it takes for me is to just plan to leave. If it's an hour trip, just plan to leave 2 hours early. And if I get where I'm going a full hour in advance, we go to a coffee shop, we sit down, we read a book, we talk, we catch up. It's no sweat. It's just easy. Or I cannot anticipate, let the environment control me, be in a mess, frantic. She'll say, they can't start without you. It's like, that doesn't help me. I hate That everybody's waiting on me. You know, everybody is, the bride is nervous, everybody is nervous. And so all I have to do is anticipate. And if I anticipate, it is so simple to leave early. If you have things change, your course changes on your phone, you're able to get there, you're an hour early. Last night we went to a play. We left 2 hours early. We were able to get us a cup of coffee. We were able to sit in the parking lot, catch up on some things we wanted to talk about, go in leisurely. It was so relaxed. It was so wonderful. But had we done what we have done in the past, not anticipated, left at the last minute, we would have been frantic. We would have been running in. It would have not been the same experience. Sometimes in life, we're really good at anticipation. When you propose marriage to somebody, I would imagine when you proposed to Brianna, you kind of knew she'd say yes. You kind of have an anticipated, not many of us propose and have them say, nah, I'm not interested. That doesn't happen for us often. But other times we are pretty bad at it. But the more you pay attention to the possibilities your environment might throw your way, the better you'll get at anticipation. And when you anticipate, you can be better prepared to at least survive and hopefully even thrive regardless of the environment. Here's a good example. I learned this in college. I learned in college that if I didn't sit on the front row in a class, every row back I sat, the more my grade would go down. Because I'm easily distracted, and if I'm sitting third or fourth or fifth row back or the back of the class, I don't hear anything. I'm not paying attention. And it took me a little while to understand, I need to sit right there. Because right there, the same way, I bet Casey's the same way. But if I'm back there, like I know Chuck Johnson's not paying attention to me. I know he's not. He's doing calculations in his head. He's working on things and thinking about the Bulldogs and all that stuff. And that's all right. But Casey loves God. He's sitting on the front row. And he is paying attention. And that's very good. I'm proud. Very good. How about going to bed? Do you know going to bed is a weird thing? All of us know sleep is important, right? All of us know sleep is important. All of us know earlier to bed, earlier to rise, going to be important, makes a young boy healthy, wealthy, wise, whatever. All of us know that. It's a remarkable thing that as a grown man, it is my decision to decide when I'm going to go to sleep. I know what time I should go to sleep. I know. But I will sit in my den, in my chair, with my iPad, knowing I am supposed to go to bed, and I will stay there 30, 40, 50 minutes, an hour later than I'm supposed to. Why? That's interesting to me. Environment's the answer. A Dutch sleep researcher team at a university, Utrecht University, called this bedtime procrastination. And what they say is we get accustomed to the environment we are in. Even though our bedroom environment is a great environment, that's important, we want to be there, but the environment we're in has a way of holding us. We don't want to break the environment we are in to go to the environment that we know we need to be in. Isn't that a crazy thing? It's environment. And so now some of you are super disciplined, and I admire that. Some of you are super disciplined. You say, no, at 9:30 or 10 o'clock or 10:30, I just go to bed. Some of you are able to do that. Most struggle. And we sit in the chair too long when we know we ought to go to bed. We know we ought to start reading a book earlier so our minds can kind of slow down just a little bit, and we know we feel better. But even then, the environment holds us. To anticipate would be, I'm setting an alarm, I'm setting my clock at this particular time, I don't care. I'm walking out of this environment, which is holding me, into the environment of my bed, which is where I need to be. Very important, I think. Third thing I want to say is this. How do we handle different environments? Well, we have to learn to adjust. Sometimes on the fly, we have to learn to adjust. And this is important. Even if you're an expert at understanding and navigating your environment and you're a total rock star using tools to anticipate what your environment will throw at you, and you avoid environments that trigger bad behavior, your environment sometimes will put you in a position where you are not prepared and you have to make a quick turn. You didn't mean to be here, but you're here. What are you going to do? Adjustment is an important tool for dealing with the little things that maybe could not have been anticipated, or even gigantic things that probably never could have been anticipated, but they just kind of come on you and you're in an environment. What are you going to do? Tell you a couple of things I'm working with. One of the things, I try to meditate every day. I try to take some time in the morning and just slow down and just kind of focus, kind of take that verse, be still and know that I am God, and just kind of slow it all down. Well, a couple of weeks ago, Jane and I talked with a neurologist, a brain doctor in Florida, and this brain doctor said he was experimenting with something called Muse. I don't know if you ever heard of it or not. It's something that goes on your head, and it's an EEG headband that provides audio confirmation of the desired alpha brainwave rhythms. So let me tell you what this means. I bought one of these. So you put it on your head, and when I am meditating, I'm in that place of peace. I hear the ocean just real soft. But when I get distracted, I hear storms because I've got earphones on, so you've got this thing registering your brainwaves. And so you have to learn how to take from distraction back to peace. How fast does it take you to get back to peace? And you hear these birds making sounds in your ears that let you know you're moving back to peace. And then you're in the waves again. Now that's crazy, and you don't have to have this to experience what I'm talking about, but there is something to learning how to get your mind focused on something peaceful and beautiful when chaos is around us. Would it be possible in traffic when suddenly we feel that tension building in us? Would it be possible to have that preset that says, I'm feeling the storms beginning to build up around me. I feel the waves getting tall. I hear the wind. This is bad. I want to find the peaceful place because that's where I'm supposed to live, in that peaceful place. Just one idea. I've been on eating plans before where I was going to be really serious about what I was eating, and then someone would make a decision for all of us that we go to a Mexican restaurant. Have you ever done that? And it's like, how do you do that? I mean, the chips, they just put the chips in front of you in the bowl. And I don't have great control. But Rick Griffin taught me this. So we go to a restaurant that we have a big group invited to the restaurant. And Rick doesn't eat the chips. He gets the salsa in a bowl and he just eats it as a soup. And that may sound gross to y'all, but he ends that night with not all the problems that for people who are trying to watch their weight or whatever that chips would cause. I think that's brilliant. That is a way of adjusting. I've got to be here. Is there a way for me to do this so I can still enjoy people's company? Is there a way to do this in an environment that's not necessarily helpful for me? I've learned that I can enjoy a hamburger just as much without a bun, but in a lettuce wrap. Now some of y'all are saying, Ray, we don't even know what you're talking about. People who worry about their weight, this is what you do. You get your hamburger in a lettuce wrap and you find out it ain't bad. It's not bad. Or Jane and I can get them to split the meal up. We'll eat one meal where we just split it. Or if I'm eating by myself, I can say, hey, before you bring it out, would you cut it in half and put some in a box, put half in a box and bring my portion and I'll eat it. I'll take the box with me. Those are ways that you make adjustments. My workout plans can't be kept. I don't have a gym. I'm out of town somewhere. I don't have a gym. What am I going to do? Body weight exercises. People can do push-ups, sit-ups. They can do all kinds of things. They can walk around the block. My 87-year-old mother-in-law does 30 repetitions of a body weight exercise before she even gets out of the bed. She does this rolling exercise thing that she thinks helps her. She does it every morning of her life because she doesn't need no stinking weight machine. She just knows she just needs to be moving around and make some adjustments, and that's what she does. What about you don't want to drink, but you're going to be socially out with people and you don't know what to do? You get club soda with a lime in it, and you just drink the club soda with a lime in it. That's what you do. I get so tense and angry in the car driving home. What can I do? You could listen to books on tape. You can get an account with Audible, and you could listen to things that would teach you, that would be helpful to you. You could learn another language. You could learn things that are going to make your life better. You could put comedy on, and you could listen to things that make you laugh. Your car can become a classroom to help you grow. Instead of letting that one environment just beat you. It doesn't have to. Let me say it again. Wise people think through their environments and put into practice buffers that will allow them to stay on the path that they've chosen. That's the big thing that I wanted you to get today. Wise people think through their environments and they stay on the path that they have chosen to be on so they can experience the things that they want to experience. While people who are more apt to make those same mistakes over and over again, they ignore the environment and then the environment eats their lunch. Hear me as I close. I really want what is best for you. I can't tell you what you need to change because only you know what that is. Only you know what you need to change. And I want you to know this, God loves you whether you change or not. You changing or not changing is not going to make God love you. That's settled. God loves you. He loves you. He loves you. He loves you. Our love for God is demonstrated by how we handle this life we've been given. Do you respect it? Do you want to be your best self in this life? And if so, are you willing to do the things necessary to genuinely change? If you are the same person in your attitudes, actions, and behaviors at this age as you were 5 years ago, something's not right. We should all be on the path of growth, growing, becoming better, learning how to do the things that make us better men and women. Would you bow your heads for prayer? Father, I pray all of us are open to growth. I pray all of us would think about our lives and think about how we can change. And we would think about how the environments we put ourselves in often drags us down and doesn't help us. Help us be wise with our environments. Help us remember the Bill Gates story and think about how we can put our families in the best environments they could possibly be in to experience the very best lives they could ever know. Help us think about how environments have shipwrecked people and how to stay away from those environments. And if we can't stay out of those environments, how we can learn how to adjust and anticipate so we can handle the environment, not have the environment handle us. Thank you. Thank you for this day. We pray this in Christ's name. Amen.